And in the UK, Boris Johnson has spoken for the first time since recovering from the coronavirus, warning of a second spike. Let's cross over now to London, where my colleague Juliana will be talking more on his speech. Hello, Juliana. Well, just before you speak, let's listen to Mr. Johnson.
Let me say directly also to British business, to the shopkeepers, to the entrepreneurs, to the hospitality sector, to everyone on whom our economy depends. I understand your impatience, I share your anxiety, and I know that without our private sector, without the drive and commitment of the wealth creators of this country, there will be no economy to speak of. There will be no cash to pay for our public services, no way of funding our NHS. And yes, I can see the long-term consequences of lockdown as clearly as anyone. And so yes, I entirely share your urgency. It's the government's urgency. And yet we must also recognise the risk of a second spike, the risk of losing control of that virus and letting the reproduction rate go back over 1.
Well, that was Mr. Boris Johnson, UK Prime Minister, making his first speech there since recovering from the coronavirus. Well, Juliana, back to you now. What has been the reactions of businesses to Boris Johnson's speech?
Well, publicly, Chimase, there hasn't yet been any immediate reaction from business lobby groups or business leaders. But I think what was pretty clear from Prime Minister Boris Johnson's first speech to the nation after he's battled with the coronavirus is that we're still in this fight and there will be no ease to the lockdown measures too. I think sometimes one can forget that, you know, even if you are a leader of a G7 nation, you're still a human being. And he came pretty close to death during his own fight with COVID-19. And I think that is definitely shaping exactly how he is thinking going forward. One of the main critiques that the government has faced over the past couple of weeks since the Prime Minister has been at his residential home in Chequers is that there hasn't been enough transparency. Anybody who's watching the news can see what's going on in the continent, and British businesses as well as the public have been getting itchy feet. They want to know how these restrictions are going to be lifted. And he did say that there would be more transparency over the next couple of days. Just 2 weeks ago, those measures were extended until next week, Thursday, which is May the 7th. And by law, the British government must review these restrictions and must give the British public an update. But, you know, the Prime Minister was backed by the new Bank of England Governor, Andrew Bailey, who did emphasise just at the beginning of last week that if these restrictions are lifted too early, then there could be a second phase, and which would mean we'd go into lockdown again, and that would all but cripple the British economy.
I'm sure they wouldn't want to see that happen again. Anyway, in another development, airline industry bosses have asked Chancellor Rishi Sunak to extend his job retention scheme beyond June. Why? And any chance the Chancellor might oblige?
Not sure yet, Chimase, whether or not Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, will oblige, but Airline UK, they're the body that look after the aviation airlines in Britain. They have written a pretty open letter to the Finance Minister asking for the retention scheme to be extended. Now, this retention scheme that I'm sure our viewers are all aware of is the government's pledge to back 80% of an employer's wages to the tune of £2,500 to basically stop staff redundancies and stopping businesses from laying off staff. And now this scheme will keep going until the end of June. But as most people are aware, it's very unlikely that the airline aviation industry is going to be back where it was a couple of months ago at the end of June. Already we've seen British Airways as well as the budget airline EasyJet take advantage of this furlough scheme, and thousands upon thousands of their employers are on it. But they are worried, and it is public knowledge that the airline industry is one of the biggest casualties from COVID-19 as airspaces are on lockdown. So they've asked for this new extension just to hope that they're able to keep their staff and perhaps not fall off the brink like we've seen with some airlines like Flybe and many others.
All right, it's the first trading day of the week. Brings us up to speed with the intraday numbers and, of course, the outlook for the rest of the week.
Well, at early trading, the FTSE 100 opened in positive territory, just short of triple-digit figures. And at intraday, it's still in positive territory. The all-share is up by 1.57%. The FTSE 100 is up by 1.42%, and the FTSE 250 is up by 2.46%. In currencies, the pound is up on the US dollar by 0.66%, up on the euro by 0.33%. And up on the Japanese yen by 0.33%. One of the biggest risers on the equities market here in the UK is Intercontinental Hotels. Their shares are up by more than 4% because they just announced that they managed to raise some cash so they can keep their boxes ticking and the liquidity flowing during the coronavirus pandemic. Of course, many of their hotel doors are shut. Brent crude at the moment still trailing 1 barrel's worth just over $20. But besides that, BP, their shares are up 0.7%, and Royal Dutch Shell, their shares are up 0.4%. What can we expect next during the week? Well, more questions for the Prime Minister. He won't be giving the daily coronavirus update at 4:30. That will be the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, but he will be at PMQs on Wednesday because the House of Commons is now open and the public are crying out for the government to be held to account. I don't think there will be much sympathy and well-wishing for the Prime Minister. There will be answers because, of course, over the weekend we reached that grim milestone of over 20,000 deaths, putting the UK at one of the worst places to be affected of coronavirus. So there's lots of questions that Boris Johnson will need to answer. His in tray is pretty full at the moment, Chimaze.
All right, let's keep a track on that, and hopefully we'll have a discussion of that during the week. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day. And in Asia, Japanese stocks led gains among the region's major markets. The Nikkei 225 rose 2.71% to close at 19,783 points. The Topix index also advanced 1.83%. The Japanese central bank announced a series of measures on Monday to combat the hit on Japan's economy as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Mainland Chinese stocks were up on the day, with the Shanghai Composite rising 0.25%, while the Shenzhen Composite fractionally higher at approximately 1,738 points. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also jumped about 1.9%. Over in South Korea, the Kospi added 1.79%. Australia's S&P ASX 200 also rose 1.5%. And in the U.S. stock futures were higher in early Monday morning trade as oil prices fell, while investors assessed the possibility of reopening the global economy after the coronavirus outbreak. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures were up 177 points, implying a Monday opening gain of around 168 points. S&P 500 and Nasdaq 100 futures also pointed to a higher Monday open for the two indices. All right, when we come back after the break, we'll turn our focus on South Africa. To stay with us.